everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all super well today. So welcome to the second episode of Gin and Topic. Yep, that is right. It is Gin and Tonic, talking about some topics which I think hopefully you'll really enjoy discussing with me. So why don't you press the pause button right now, go grab yourself a gin and tonic and let's get started. So today's episode is all about how to live in London on a budget. Now you're probably thinking, Laura, don't you sort of talk about things that are rather expensive sometimes and definitely not budget worthy? And yeah, that's completely true. You know, I hold my hands up to that. But that's only because I've got to the point in my life where now I can afford to do those things. I very much started out in London on a budget. If you saw my last video, which was how I got my job at investment bank, then I talked about being an intern in London and very much on an intern's wage. And so I lived, you know, in London on a budget. So I thought I would talk about some of the tips and tricks that I picked up while I was sort of on a much tighter budget, because obviously we know London is super expensive, but it doesn't mean you can't do it if you're on a budget, and it doesn't mean you still can't have fun. So, okay, let's get on with the first part, rent. Yep, renting in London is super expensive. I'm not gonna lie, that is gonna be your biggest outgoing. It is insane. Basically, you're not gonna be able to rent your own place if you're on a budget. Renting a one-bedroom apartment is very expensive. And something that I actually never did, I've actually never rented on my own in London. I live now just outside of London, commuting every day just because it's a lot cheaper and it means I can have my own house now. But when I lived in central London, I always lived with housemates. Now, a double room will roughly, obviously it depends where you live, but on average will set you back between £650 and £750 pounds every month, not including bills. Now, a single room is around about £450 to £550. Now, obviously that is a lot of money, especially if you're not on a lot, but that's kind of what you pay for London. Now, London is divided into zones. These really are, they're really based on the tube map and how much the fare is, but it kind of does dictate really as well like rent prices. So technically London has 9 zones, but 6 of those are really like London as a city, and because the rest, like 7, 8 and 9 are actually in like Greater London, like some of them are even in Surrey, so it's really 6 that are like London. So the closer you get, like the zones is in like 1, 2, 3, because they start off in the centre of London. So like 1 is, you know, your Oxford Street, your Westminster, all your touristy things. That is your zone 1. That is obviously the most expensive. And the general rule is, obviously there's exceptions, but the general rule is the further out you go, the cheaper it gets. So if you're on a budget, it's unlikely, again, exceptions to the rule, but it's unlikely that you're going to be renting in zone 1. Now, when I was an intern, I actually lived in zone 3. So that's, I mean, you kind of want a balance for me, because I'll be completely honest, you know, you could live far out, like zone 5, but if I'm moving to London, I want to be close, especially if I'm commuting into work every day, and I want to be close to the action. We have to go out, and then it costs me a fortune to get home at night. I get it. You want to be as close into the centre as possible, so you kind of experience London as much as possible, but obviously you need a balance between the rent prices. So for me, I think zone 3 is still very accessible. I say very accessible in relation to London. So zone 3 is pretty good. I lived in a place called Ealing, which is over on the west side. Now, it used to be very much that east was a lot cheaper than west, but again, that's kind of changed a lot now because of like Shoreditch and Hoxton, all that's becoming sort of the super cool, trendy places to be. So they're kind of balancing out, to be honest. So I paid, for a single room, I paid £500 a month in a 3-bedroom flat, not including bills. So some of the best places, you can imagine, to look for rooms are your spareroom.com and your easyroommate.com. I'll obviously link below so you can get all the details, but they're great. If you've never been on them, you can search by like area, price, number of rooms in the house. My advice to you, based on experience, is go and meet all the housemates. because you want to know who you're living with, but also for a safety point of view. So I'm not going to go into too much detail. One of my previous housemates turned out to be a stalker, an actual convicted stalker, and we had the police break down our door. Long story, but anyway, luckily I was fine and it was outside of the flat. But yeah, so that's what I'm trying to say. There are some absolute weirdos out there, so please watch out. Okay, so then the next thing that is going to be one of your biggest outgoings is travel. Now again, travel is kind of one of those unavoidable things. London is really massive. You kind of don't really realise until you actually live there. So obviously the main transport in London is the underground, and I personally absolutely love the underground. It's different to New York in the sense that it's a lot cleaner and you have the actual times on the board, whereas in New York, I think from when I've only been once, but I'm pretty sure it was very much like you just went and you didn't know when it was going to turn up. It's not like that in London at all. To get around, you can have, this kind of changed. Traditionally it was have an Oyster card, which is like a little credit card, like plastic card, and you would add money onto it and you would like tap on the gates at the underground, and you would go in, you would tap out, and depending on how far you travelled, it would charge you. When I say how far I travelled, that's actually between the zones, which I talked about before, so it's not like based on miles, it's just how many zones you went through. Now you can basically pay with your debit card because now contactless, and that is the same price as a pay-as-you-go Oyster, but if you want to save money, the more months you can pay for, the cheaper it gets. So rather than pay for pay-as-you-go or a day or a week, if you pay for a month, you get, I don't know what the discount is, but you get like a discount off your travel, and if you pay for 3 months, you get more of a discount, and then obviously you pay for a year, you get a lot greater discount. Now, the only thing is a year's travel card is something ridiculous, like £3,000, and obviously if you're on a budget, you're not likely to have that up front. So I would say pay for a month. Just consider it as one of your bills, save up, put some money aside every month, and then pay that off, and you don't have to think about it for the month, but you save a lot more if you pay for that. Now, there's also a free transport in the sense of the Boris bikes. The Boris bikes, well, they're actually called the Santander bikes now, because they're the people that sponsor it, but Boris Johnson, our previous mayor, was the person who came up with this initiative. These are bikes that there's thousands across the city, and I think it's up to half an hour that you can ride on a bike for free. And basically you pick one up from a little docking station, you ride it for half an hour and you put it back at another docking station somewhere else. Obviously if you want to ride it more than half an hour you pay, but it's super cheap, it's like a couple of pounds per like hour, or you can get kind of again like a sort of like monthly pass if you like to be using it all the time. But to be honest, if you just want to get from A to B really quickly, then this is a free way to get around. Okay, so let's get on to some of the fun stuff. So you're in London, you're on a budget, but it doesn't mean that you can't like have fun, eat out, drink out, do all the great things, because that's the whole point of being in London. Obviously one of my biggest things I love doing is eating out. So I've got a couple of tips. The first one is get yourself a taste card. If you don't know, a taste card, it gives you either 50% off or 2 for 1 at there's like 100 different restaurants, and it's not just London, there's across the country, but obviously there's a kind of a concentration of restaurants in London, but there's also like you can use it in like big cities like Manchester and Birmingham or Liverpool. But so all these there's lots of chains, so you've got like Zzz's and Pizza Express and Cafe Rouge, but then loads and loads of independent restaurants as well, which I think is like the best part of it. So there were some really great restaurants that I discovered. So in Camden there's a really famous one called Shaka Zulu, which is a South African restaurant, and it's something ridiculous. It costs like £3 million to decorate this place. It's incredible. They do all African art, and it's absolutely massive. You can try springbok and zebra and a crocodile and all these kind of exotic meats. Well, exotic to us in the UK anyway. Usually the taste card, I think it's about £75, but Honestly, there's so many offers if you just Googled that will give it you for $24.99. So I got it mine for $24.99. I told my friends they got it. So if you just go online, there's all these like vouchers just floating around. So you can get it for like £25. There's restaurants popping up left, right and centre every single day practically. And so many of these restaurants have things called soft launches. And that's where they're not officially open yet, they don't do a lot of advertising, and usually it's when the full menu's not available and they only do a few covers. But if you go onto, there's literally some websites I'll list below, like Hot Dinners and Design My Night, but they will tell you what restaurants are coming up, they'll have their soft launches and what dates. It's usually a few days, maybe a week before they have their big launch. And you can go, and usually it's about 50% off their regular price, and you have it. And obviously they want some feedback. So there might be a few things that are not quite right, like the staff might not be fully trained yet, they might not know the menu inside out, maybe the food might get tweaked before it actually goes live, but it's only like a week before, so everything's sort of in place, and you get like 50% off. So it's a really great way to try some like brand new restaurants at discount prices. Okay, so then what about then when you don't want to eat out? You still got to eat during the day. Now, in London, obviously there's a lot of fancy ass places like Whole Foods and Planet Organic. Definitely not gonna help if you're on a budget. However, there are some really amazing markets. Now, some of the markets obviously have a lot of artisan food, which is going to be super expensive. However, some of the stalls are also really good value too, and you can buy in bulk. So, for example, Borough Market, yes, it is like one of the most touristy hotspots you can possibly think of. However, they have some really great bargains. So obviously if you're gonna go there and look at bread and like their meats and cheese, a lot of time they can be really expensive. But away from sort of like the center where the hustle and bustle is, there's around the edge, there's a lot of like fruit and vegetables from farmers who've been going there for absolute years. And they're just selling literally like fruit and veg. So it's not artisan produce, but because it's from farmers and there's no like middlemen and supermarkets, then they put on the price savings to you, so you can buy like your fruit and veg from Borough Market for really cheap. And then another great one is Spitalfields Market. Now, Spitalfields Market has become a bit more gentrified. I actually work at Spitalfields Market, so I literally see it every single day. So there are a lot of like commercial shops there now. However, there's still a lot of like the market stalls that are literally your traders who come in on a weekend and during the week now, actually, to be fair, and set up their stalls. And they have everything from clothing, it's your typical market store clothing, to handmade pots and paintings and random bags. And there's literally, Spitalfields, there's everything kind of random that you could think of. I really love it. But what's great is though, there are a lot of cheap things. So like the clothing, sure, it's not going to be like your top shop and your bang on trend clothing, but if you're looking for pretty cheap like t-shirts and pants and jeans and sweatshirts, then it's a really great place to go. And of course you can negotiate and knock them down on their price. Then of course around Spitalfields, if you walk a bit further to Brick Lane, there are loads of vintage stores. Now, you have to be careful with vintage stores in London, because some of them are genuine vintage things and some of them are not. Some are just things that people say are vintage and look vintage but aren't really. Then you have the vintage stores, which are your designer vintage stores, which are going to be super expensive. And then you've got those really great ones, which are like random clothing from like the 70s and 80s. That is really great prices. And there's stuff that some people might not want, but if you're more into quirky things, or if you're pretty handy with a sewing machine, you might want to do some alterations. And there's some great videos on YouTube where people do that and obviously make it into more modern pieces. So around Brick Lane's really great for that, but you just have to be careful about things that are genuine, things that are not, and the prices can fluctuate massively. But if you're willing to spend a few hours and kind of like shop around, then you can definitely get some great vintage clothing buys from there. So I hope you found some of these tips and tricks useful, and it just gave you an idea of kind of costs and some things that you can do to make your living in London on a budget a little bit more comfortable. So yeah, comment below if you've got any other suggestions or things that you think other people who are watching this might find useful, if they're going to start living in London soon. And of course, if you are about to live in London and you're worried about stuff, ask away below. And of course, if you enjoyed this, please do like it and then subscribe for more videos, and I will see you very soon. Bye guys!